One of the most amazing feats you'll ever accomplish as a human being already happened, and that is language development. Think about it. When you were a baby, all these sounds were coming at you. Somehow, you're able to figure out which sounds or words, general grammatical rules, and you're able to apply them without any formal training. And that is so amazing. So naturally, a lot of research has been done as to how this ability develops. Good day, everyone. I am Jenny PG Arimbuyutan, and I am tasked to continue the discussion on theories of language learning. So, what is language learning? Language learning is the process by which the language capability develops in a human. At this moment, let me discuss four of these language theories of acquisition: usage-based theory, Noam Chomsky's theory of language acquisition, language acquisition device or the LAD, and Crystal's theory of acquisition. The first theory is usage-based theory by Michael Tomasello. So before discussing the theory, let me first give you a short background of the theorist. Michael Tomasello was born in 1950. He is an American developmental and comparative psychologist as well as linguist. Let me discuss the first theory, usage-based theory. It is an input-based learning and various approaches to second language acquisition or SLA. It states that language structure emerges from language use, and children build their language relying on their general cognitive skills. So these cognitive skills will help the children to identify the intention of adult speakers as well as the distributional patterns of the language. So after establishing patterns, young children generalize those patterns to form abstract linguistic categories to their specific language. According to Tomasello, the usage-based approach to linguistic communication may be summarized into two principles. Meaning is use, and structure emerges from use. The first principle represents an approach to the functional and semantic dimensions of linguistic communication. In this approach, we should focus on how people use linguistic conventions to achieve social ends, while the second principle represents an approach to the structural or grammatical dimension of linguistic communication that focus on how meaning-based grammatical construction emerge from individual acts of language use. Combining these two approaches, Tomasello proposed a usage-based theory of language acquisition. He stated that children acquire language equipped with two sets of cognitive skills: intention reading and pattern finding. Intention reading is what children must do to determine the goals or intention of mature speakers when they use linguistic conventions to achieve social ends, and thereby to learn these conventions from them culturally. That is accordance with the functional approach I mentioned earlier. While pattern finding is what children must do in order to extract abstract linguistic schemas or constructions from the individual utterance, that is accordance with the grammatical approach mentioned a while ago. Therefore, this means that usage-based theory has two main dimensions. These are functional and grammatical dimensions. In the intention reading or functional dimension, an example is, "Can you open the door for me?" Again, that's under functional dimension. So in this situation, children must work out that the question is a request of help and not a request into their opening skills. While in pattern finding, the children realize the pattern in English, which is noun, verb, noun, in an utterance such as Jane kicks the ball. Again, that's under grammatical dimension. Okay, so the children will be able to generate the pattern on their own. So the children may adopt the pattern and create their own sentences such as the dog wants to eat or the cat wants to play. Now let me discuss to you the next theory, Noam Chomsky's theory of language acquisition. Abram Noam Chomsky was born in December 1928. He is an American linguist, philosopher, cognitive scientist, historian, and social critic, sometimes described as the father of modern linguistics. Chomsky is also a major figure in analytic philosophy and one of the founders of the field of cognitive science. Noam Chomsky postulated that the mechanism of language acquisition is derived from the innate processes. And when we say innate, it is something which is already there in mind since birth. This theory is proved by the children living in same linguistic community. Moreover, they are not influenced by external experiences which bring about the comparable grammar. This theory shows the way children acquire language and what they learn from it. Chomsky believes that from birth, children are born with the inherited skill to learn and pick up any language. He noted that children don't learn language from the imitation. They pick up nouns, verbs, which become imprinted upon their brain. A known fact shows that all children, despite their intellectual ability, can become fluent within their native language within only 5 years of learning. Noam Chomsky suggested that learning language is a lot like learning to walk. Although you learn from practice, we are all born with an understanding of how to walk in addition to language. His evidences prove that the theory is correct, as it is known that if an adult was talking to a child and had made a grammar mistake, the child would notice it. He has evidences to show that children don't learn language through imitation. This is shown through simple grammar mistakes that children make, like I drawed and I drew. When a child is in the process of learning to speak, they would most likely always get their nouns, verbs, and subjects correct and in the right places. It is shown that children would use and make up words while learning to speak like mama ball instead of mom. So to summarize, Chomsky was unconvinced by other thinkers like John Locke, who argued that people are born blank slates. Instead, Chomsky argued that children learning to speak cannot possibly start as blank slates because they simply don't have enough information to perform many of the complex grammatical maneuvers he observed them making. And according to Chomsky, our familiar slates cannot be completely blank when we are born. We must be hardwired with structures in our brains, or what he called language acquisition devices, or LAD, and this is what I'm going to discuss next. Language acquisition device, or LAD, is also introduced by Noam Chomsky. The language acquisition device is a hypothetical module of the human mind suggested to account for children's innate predisposition for language acquisition. Its concept is an instinctive mental capacity which enables an infant to acquire and produce language. LAD is a component of nativist theory of language. So that means that it asserts that humans are born with the instinct or innate facility for acquiring language. Chomsky argued that a child's ability to acquire language was inbuilt, meaning language isn't taught but instead a natural development that happens when children are exposed to language. Each child has a language acquisition device, or LAD, which allows them to take in and use the grammatical rules of the language spoken where they live. A summary explaining LAD by Chomsky states that languages are infinite, pertaining to the sequence of word forms and grammar. Then these words forms organize grammatically correct sequences of words that can be pulled over a limited lexicon of each independent language. So that means that LAD is tasked to select from the infinite grammars that is then correct for the language that is presented to an individual. The last theory that I'm going to discuss to you today is Kristall's theory of acquisition by David Kristall. David Kristall was born in 1941, is the foremost writer and lecturer on the English language. Professor Kristall is also best known for his two encyclopedias, the Cambridge Encyclopedia of Language and the Cambridge Encyclopedia of the English Language. So what does this have to do with child language acquisition? Well, David Kristall has the theory that children learn language in 5 stages. Let me start with the first stage. Stage 1. This is where children say things for 3 purposes: to get something they want, to get someone's attention, and to draw attention to something. And then they begin to make basic statements such as daddy, dog. And during this stage, children begin naming things with single words and then move on to relating objects with other things, places, and people. For example, their mommy. And they also relate objects with events. For example, bird gone. At this early stage, they don't have much vocabulary, so they use intonation to ask questions. And also, children use words like there, want, and all gone to express a full sentence. Stage 2. This is when children usually ask questions and where questions come first. Their questions often begin with interrogative pronouns such as what and where, followed by a noun or verb such as where, gone. In this stage, children become concerned with naming and classifying things by frequently asking, "Was that?" instead of "What's that?" And they may also begin to talk about the characteristics of things. For example, big and small. Children are taught to learn things in opposite pairs such as up and down and hot and cold. Stage 3. By now, children would be asking lots of different questions, but often signaling that they are questions with intonation alone. For example, Sally play in garden, mommy? This is made into a question by varying the tone of voice. And in here, children soon begin to express more complex ones by using more grammatically correct language. For example, I want mommy to take it to work, which means I want mommy to take it to work. Verbs such as listen and know are also used. Children refer to events in the past and less often in the future. They usually talk about continuing action. For example, she's still in bed, and ask about the state of actions, whether something is finished or not. Stage 4. This is when children use increasingly complex sentence structures and begin to explain things, ask for explanations using the word why, and making a wide range of requests, just like the use of the question, shall I do it? Now, they are able to use complex sentence structures. They have flexible language tools for expressing a wide range of meanings. And probably the most remarkable development is their comprehension of language and use of abstract verbs. For example, the word know. That is to express mental operations. Stage 5. By this stage, children regularly use language to do all the things that they need it for. So they give information, asking and answering questions, requesting directly and indirectly, suggesting, offering, and stating and expressing. In this stage, children are now able to talk about things hypothetically and conditionally. For example, if I were you, I would. and they are now able to explain conditions required for something to happen. You've got turn that tap on first in order to wash your hands. They are also able to make general references to past and future. Children now talk about particular times such as after tea and before bedtime. Again, these are the four theories of language learning that I discussed today. Usage-based theory, Noam Chomsky's theory of language acquisition, specifically language acquisition device, Crystal's theory of acquisition. That would be all. Thank you.